Good hello and welcome back to Read Between the Frames. Following on from exactly where we left off, talking about One Punch Man. Go check it. Picking right back off, we were talking about how Genos had been fighting against Saitama. Now the tables have turned. What is going to happen?
It bridges now into a dialogue scene. There's the biggest cooldown we've had yet. It goes for quite a while. There's quite a lot of talking. There's a lot of the slow close-up pan monologue things that animes like to do. Genos is saying to Saitama that he's only been dodging the attacks. He's not taken any swings back at him. Why? He wants him to fight back as hard as he can. Now, of course, given the premise of the show, that's a very dangerous thing to ask for. But now that we've been demonstrated just how impossibly strong Genos is, being able to blow up such huge chunks of a mountain and zip around that fast that easily, how does Saitama compare to such strength? Will they approach it a bit differently for someone who is supposed to be so much stronger than he? That's it. That's all we're given. It's 7 drawings. Each one's very similar to the last. A very slight tilt down. We don't actually know what that means until the next shot, mid-dialogue, he appears right in front of Genos. And the pacing, the angles, the colors is super important. Notice that all we see is his fist. Leaning back, revealing just the white glowing eyes. Look at this. This still tells so much. It tells so much. There's such a story taking place here. What is going through both of these characters' minds is fully explained. And as I was saying at the start, how pretty much all of this super intense action is all coming down to simply be a joke, is always portrayed through the portrayal of these two characters. Genos being the stereotypical anime protagonist, standing there all brood and handsome and tough, whereas Saitama is usually drawn really goofy until suddenly moments like this. Like, these moments become hilarious because it goes from being such a goofball to being so hardcore. But how are they going to make his attacks seem more powerful than Genos's? We've seen these incredible beams that blow up mountains and leave molten rock on the ground. How is a guy whose ability is just a punch going to feel more powerful than that? Like this. It's an encouragement to think creatively outside the box. Less can be more. After such incredible frame-by-frame animation, and so much detailed and organic effects, that the thing to overpower all of that with a single move is actually a still. The animation here is purely cosmetic. The shifting speed lines and the whiffling of his hair and a bit of parallax depth tweening. But it just works. It works so well. Because it doesn't just stop there. It delivers into the most full-on camera quake we've had. Now, I really don't want to encourage that if you want to make your scenes more powerful. Just give lots of camera shake all the time. No. That just gives people motion sickness. If it is acted upon as a third character to complement particular movements, then it can be a fantastic ally. Going from the dramatic build-up of this punch to deliver back into a real-life setting, the blur is incredibly dramatic, but it slows down to being completely still very quickly. However, it only stays completely still for about 2 frames before it takes right back off again and becomes just as powerful, only now bringing smoke into the scene because the next shot is that. So the infinite power of Saitama is very clearly demonstrated because this has happened and it's just punching the air. He's not connected with anything. Finally, the entire scene's punchline is that he just boops me in the face and says, "I'm hungry. Let's get some lunch." And waddles off. Something about that waddle after a fight that we've just seen it's just brilliant. But the true punchline isn't in suddenly going from hectic art to goofy art, but it remains in the very detailed stuff. And that is what Genos sees behind him. The true devastation of Saitama simply punching the air. Revealing that. You see that even the clouds have been blown apart? This is one of the most well set up jokes I've seen in animation ever. There's so much stuff these days that just relies on verbal humor depending so heavily on the script that this is so clever.
Now that we have had an analysis of the entire scene, it's time to take a bird's eye view of the whole thing and see how it's all been put together. Now, whether or not this is intentional or simply coincidence, there does seem to be an undeniable pattern. Take, for instance, these couple of shots near the beginning. They are broken up into 3 distinctive beats. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. What seems to give a lot of these shots a bit of extra oomph is this third beat on the end. The first moment is acting as anticipation, where it suddenly jumps into the second. The second is simply anticipation for the third, where it suddenly jumps into that. The third beat being so short and only a few frames long that it seems to throw the viewer into the very next shot. Almost every shot in the sequence seems to have that little bit extra something thrown in at the very, very end. Have a look at this chart, you can probably see what I mean. These 3 arcs representing the 3 distinct beats, suddenly spiking where it moves into the next one. This other line, which seems to dip down before jumping up at each beat, represents some sort of other elemental aesthetic, whether it be camera shake or rocks flying past the screen. At the beginning of each beat, it's very intense before it cools down gradually over the course of that moment, ramping up very suddenly for the next bit. Combining the two together, you get these really punchy 3-piece moments. Even more fascinating, however, is not that it happens on every shot. However, the entire scene as a whole seems to be wrapped up within the framework of this very idea. The bulk of the fight is wrapped up in 3 distinctive beats that follow an almost identical curve to the one seen in the individual shots. The first fight scene is the longest, where the camera is quite tight in on the characters. The second fight scene is a bit shorter, but more intense, the camera often taking a bit of a step back. The third is the shortest yet, but also the punchiest, just the same as in these individual shots, where it had only been a few frames, this one's represented by only a few shots. What breaks them apart in regards to the scene as a whole is represented a bit differently to the curving down line that we've seen representing camera shake and rocks and things, but rather elements of like a cooldown period, where the fight slows, there is a bit of dialogue before ramping up to throw us into the fray again. These moments are very important for keeping the viewer engaged. Almost like exhaling, if you will, is almost a metaphor for breathing. Inhaling for the fights, exhaling for the cooldown. Now, it is possible that the audience has been becoming subconsciously used to the idea of these 3-beat movements, so when the main fight scene comes to an end, at the end of 3 segments, it feels like a natural point for the fight to stop, which is potentially why it hits us completely out of nowhere when suddenly we get a 4th moment, which is of course the one we've been breaking down at the beginning of this video, when the music drastically changes from Genos' electronic theme to Saitama's rock theme. The contrast of the music, the pacing, the length, and the power all add up to this, but of course the one that we probably weren't expecting, because of the structure of the entire scene, is simply that there is a 4th scene at all. But it really doesn't matter because he'll still lose against Stronger Than Everyone, man.